This is the Bagel Report, a podcast exploring Jewish representation and identity in popular culture, with your hosts Esther Kostanowitz and Aaron Ben Moshe, and now a production of J, the Jewish News of Northern California.
Hey, Esther.
Aaron, we're back.
We're back for another week, for another episode. They let us come back.
It's so amazing that they let us come back. I'm very excited to be here with you. And it's really amazing how much has happened in the last week.
Boy, what a year it's been this week.
That's right. It's like, what did they say? Last week I spent 3 months in Cleveland or something like that.
Anyway, we're here. It's been a crazy another week of pop culture. And before we get to the big news, the big Academy Awards announcement, we have some Newy and Jewy things for you.
That's right. But if you're a huge Oscars fan, don't worry. We will cover that probably more than you ever will need. But for now, let's start with Newy and Jewy. So I wanted to shout out this great profile in The Forward by Jody Vrudorn, The Forward's editor, in which she talked to Josh Malina, everybody's favorite Jewish commentator on the internet, and also everybody's favorite West Wing scandal alum, and also everybody's favorite fundraiser for Mazon.
Jewish causes,
There's a couple of tidbits we wanted to share. The first thing is about this whole issue of like casting people who are Jewish as Jews. In their conversation, Jody discovers that when Aaron Sorkin first approached Josh Malina about The West Wing, he said that the Jewish character quota had been met because they already had Toby Ziegler and Josh Lyman. And so when Josh Malina joined the show, he couldn't be a Jewish character, and that Will Bailey was definitely a WASP. Malina said that he laughed and he was amused by it, that he's an actor and he can play not Jewish, so it wasn't going to be a problem. And he was also just super psyched to be on the best show in television. Now, which show was that again? That was The East Wing? Is that what it's called?
Don't do this to me. Don't be like that. You know it's The West Wing and you're just doing it to piss me off, and it's working. Yeah, I think it's so fun when he talks about his non-Jewish character in The West Wing, because Aaron Sorkin is notorious for creating characters, whether or not they're Jewish, they feel Jewish. Amy Sherman Palladino also does this in a lot of her roles. Just the vast knowledge of culture and entertainment and Jewishness and Broadway. It just, the way that these characters talk, regardless if they're Jewish or not, they seem Jewish. So I think it's really funny when he says like, Will Bailey was kind of a WASP, because he's not really Jewish, but just from like the lingo and the way that he communicates with Toby and Josh, like it really does feel like he could be.
Right. But does that have to do with the banter and the pacing of the dialogue? Is that because it's Sorkin-esque, and so it's like inherently that's what it is?
Absolutely. I think it's because the writer is Jewish and is pulling from the rhythm in which he talks and his family and his life and the world that he respects. There's like a rhythm there that kind of feels Jewish. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a real
rhythm
thing.
And musicality for sure.
But like, let's get back to Josh Malina. I love that The Forward took time to interview him, because he is such a proud Jewish person. And he is not just like the performative kind of Jewish person. Like he really, every day, all walks of life, he's constantly being a proud Jewish person. And also, anytime someone offends him, he makes a donation in their name. He like makes donations in Mel Gibson's name to Jewish causes all the time. And it's like, I just love the way he exists in this world. And I love that he just had a moment.
Yeah, he just has like, he often ends up kind of trolling the people who need to be trolled, but also doing it with humor instead of with mean-spiritedness. So
no,
it's
he
just
definitely is mean-spirited about it, but like they're bad people. So they're like internet trolls. So it's like, okay.
No, but like instead of like, picketing outside Mel Gibson's house, like he makes a donation in his name to the Holocaust Museum, right?
Exactly.
So
totally.
like, it's just, it's even if you're, if you're speaking poorly about somebody who might or might not deserve it, in this case definitely does, the idea of also doing like a positive mitzvah at the same time is an interesting approach.
I love it.
Anyway, so, the whole issue of authentic representation is, as he says in the piece, as we've said before, a tough nut to crack, because as he says in the piece, the quintessence of being an actor is portraying what you aren't or who you aren't. And that's right. And we know that. And by the same token, people who are Jewish in Jewish roles really add something. So, I think this is not going to be a conversation that Jody and Josh can write a profile about, and then all of a sudden it's solved. I'm not saying that's what she was doing, but it's one of the things that we'll be talking about in episodes ahead as additional people are cast in roles that are or aren't Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, Marissa Abella, whose name I don't know, but we will know her because she's playing Amy Winehouse in a biopic called Back to Black. She's an up-and-coming British actress born to a Jewish mother and a Lebanese-Maltese father.
Mm.
And she's going to be in that movie about Barbie that Greta Gerwig is directing.
Can't wait for that. It's going to be great.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
No, I'm so excited. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be the best summer of the year.
She's the one who did Little Women also, right? She directed Little Women.
Great.
And now
her.
This is like the littlest woman. It's a Barbie doll.
Yeah, but it's going to be great. Oh, Esther, it's going to be so much fun. And that's great. So she's going to make a quick appearance in Barbie, and then she's going to be Amy Winehouse, which is also very cool. Is she Jewish?
Yeah.
Wow.
She comes from a British Jewish family. Yeah. So
wow.
it's one of those things that people are excited about because, this could have gone a different way.
Yeah. Well, that's great. We love a good biopic. We love a musical biopic. They're really hot right now. And how exciting.
There's so many Jewish characters in the news, and some of them are real people playing Jewish roles. Some of them are fictional people on screen who are Jewish. And
I think I know where you're going with this.
And then there's this strange kind of area where people are characters, but they're also on reality shows, and we don't know what's real and what's not. And so, Aaron, you know me so well. But for our listeners, and I know that you are out there who cannot get enough of My Unorthodox Life, which is a reality show on Netflix that's about a formerly Haredi, ultra-Orthodox woman who is now inexplicably and strangely the head of a elite models management or something like that. Anyway, so for our listeners who can't get enough of My Unorthodox Life, I have two things to say to you. Okay, so the first one is why? Why? Can't you just move on and let's watch something else for a while?
Fantastic.
But if you super love it, and there are definitely people who super love it, so I want to make those people aware that The J published a story by Lillian Ilsley Green about Miriam Hart, who apparently lives in the Bay Area. She's one of the Hart daughters. And on the show, especially this year, she seems to have really tied her fate to her mother's company. And she's only 22. She has graduated from Stanford last year with a degree in computer science.
Where was that in the show?
I know. She works as an app engineer, an NFT developer, and she also taught an undergraduate course on virtual reality when she was studying at Stanford. So what we're saying is she's a brain. She's really got a brain on her. And on the show, she says that she hopes to one day run the tech side of Elite World Group, which, it sounds like a good idea in some respects because she has an in there, it's her mom's company. But I'm really hoping that she gets to kind of grow in a different direction, to individuate from her mom more. And maybe we should just let Batsheva and Julia have New York, and Miriam can just become her own super smart person on the West Coast.
Oh my God, that would be a spinoff I'd watch. Because I feel like they really played into the LGBTQ part of her and not at all about everything else about her personality, which is really cool. And I think they should do more. They should do both, because also that's really cool too.
I wish Miriam Hart well. She lives in the Bay Area. So Jay readers, watch out for her. She's out there somewhere making NFTs and apps. Maybe she's made an app about this podcast right now. Who knows? Good luck to her. Let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a minute.
Hey, Esther, LA may be all abuzz because of the Oscar nominations, but in San Francisco, the Jewish Film Institute is gearing up to present the 10th annual Winterfest, February 25th and 26th at the Vogue Theater.
The weekend-long festival showcases 9 documentaries and narratives from local and international filmmakers that offer a kaleidoscopic view of Jewish life and culture.
So join JFI for 2 exciting days of local premieres, community conversations, and contenders for international awards.
You can get your tickets, passes, and film information at jfi.org/winterfest.
And now back to the Bagel Report. All right, Esther, it's time. Are you ready? Did you wake up at 5:30 in the morning to watch the Oscar nominations live, or were you me and thought they meant 8:30 and you woke up and it was too late and you missed it?
I was neither of those things.
Oh,
I was neither up at 5:30, nor was I you. I was me. And when I woke up this morning, I just looked on the internet and they had all the information, almost like I didn't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning.
Okay,
although you know
they were announced.
Who did?
Jody Berman-Kostanovich.
Yes, from 2 Movie Jews. She was up and live Instagramming her reactions, and she's going to do a special episode of her podcast about that. So we always recommend an Oscar time that you go visit Jody's Oscar blog. She really knows everything, so she's awesome.
Esther, why is it that, okay, everything is Eastern time. I get it. But the Oscars are here. Why can't it be 8:30 here in LA? Because every time I'm like messing up the times because I can't remember what is PT and what is Eastern time. And I was so ready. I woke up and I missed it. Maybe next year.
When I made the decision to air these nominations at 5:30 this morning, wait, that wasn't me.
All right, I get it. Okay, so long story short, the Oscar nominations came out this week, and it was pretty, it didn't feel, there were only a couple of things where I was like, what? This isn't here at all. But other than that, I was quite pleased.
Yeah, a couple of surprises, but like nothing really outrageous. You remember last week we were talking about Hunters, and there was something that was kind of like a wish that then like was fulfilled with the Oscar nominations this morning. Remind us what that was about.
Yes, there was a lot of hate this week. And all of a sudden, you see a lot of diverse celebration on screen. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, which centers on an Asian family, picked up 11 nominations. The second, Black Panther, which is a blockbuster movie, a Marvel movie, it won 5 nominations and made history for being the first MCU movie to have an acting award, thanks to Angela Bassett.
Nomination, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Steven Spielberg's Jewish film, his biopic, not biopic.
Right, exactly.
It picked up 8 nominations, which is kind of cool. Like, is it perfect? No. Are there a lot of snubs? Of course. Are we going to talk about it? Yes. But I think it's kind of awesome that, especially now, like 2 really successful movies where Asian families, specifically Asian mothers and daughters, have chances to shine and be really complex in their feelings, are being celebrated at the Oscars. I think that is really freaking fantastic and what we need right now.
Yeah, it's almost enough to make us forget that no women directors were nominated.
Okay, it's true. That's
a couple of good years, right? No, but I think you're right. I think that there's some interesting trends happening in terms of how hate and ethnic specificity are both being broadcast in TV and film. And I think we're seeing a lot of different ways to come at those war years. And I think, in some ways, the complaints about there not being enough stories about people of color or about stories that portray, Jews in positive light or Jews as active shapers of their fate, or Asian people with going beyond the stereotypes, especially in Everything Everywhere All at Once, with infinite universes where people can be all kinds of things and different kinds of characters, even as they're still themselves. It's really, that movie I really need to watch again because it's just like there's so much happening. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing to point out. And it's really interesting juxtaposition considering what we talked about last week. So.
And another Jewish nod went to Diane Warren. And bless her heart, she has been nominated 14 times for Best Song. She's known for like the anthems of like like the 80s and the 90s. And, yes. And she won. She was nominated again. She's never won, and she probably will not win this year because once again, there are just so many good songs that are going to be nominated. And there's been a certain song already that's been a contender to win. So maybe this year it'll be different. But she's already been nominated. You know, she already got an honorary Oscar last year, and she won a Clio Award, which is an advertising award because so many trailer houses used her music in their trailer campaigns, and those awards were at the Dolby Theater. And so she at least got to, receive an award there. So it's kind of like she won an Oscar already.
And you interviewed her, right?
I did. I interviewed her a couple years ago when people were saying there's another rise in anti-Semitism, which people do a lot.
Must be Tuesday.
Yeah, right. So she was saying that she was just really proud to be Jewish and be this like visible Jewish success story in a time where people did not want her to be Jewish.
And I read a bit about her and, she talks about how her family's original surname was Wolfberg, but they changed it to Warren because her father wanted it to sound less Jewish, which is, so interesting. And she talks about, they ask her about relationships and she says, I've never been in love like in my songs. I'm not like normal people. I'm no good at relationships. I draw drama to me. It's the Jew in me. And
interesting.
I don't know. It's like a, do we court drama? Are Jews
the drama?
Are we the drama? Do we bring the drama to your mama? I don't know. But it was just interesting to read a little bit more about her, not just in terms of her Jewish identity. I actually did see her at a gala for Creative Community for Peace. So like I think she was honored by them last year and was at the event this year. So she's definitely very identified Jewish, but I think also she's very unusual in the musical world because she's written for so many different kinds of singers.
Yeah.
Aerosmith and Celine Dion. It's like Laura Branigan and who's way before your time. When you look down the list of songs, you're just like, I love that song. I love that song. I love that song.
Which is why it's so crazy that she's never won, because the songs that do win, you're like, oh, that was also a really good song.
Yeah, but she also talks about how she maintains the rights to her songs. So can you just imagine like what that means? And it's really an act of defiance,
Like she hasn't sold her catalog yet. And when she does, watch out.
Yes. So one of the things that I was kind of surprised to see about the Oscars is that She Said was not nominated for anything. And I was both surprised and not surprised by it because I do think, and I think I said this when we were talking about it first, right after I saw it, is that I feel like for many people, it's too soon to talk about because it's really just a few years ago. I mean, it feels like more because of the pandemic, but, Harvey Weinstein, real person who's still having his trial, and still being sentenced and all that stuff, right? Isn't he?
Yeah, he was sentenced and he might it's possible he might go to retrial, but like, yeah,
but he's still a person who's like in the news now for the same thing that they're talking about in the movie. And that's like a very strange position to be in. But one of the pictures that's my old character.
Love it. No.
One of the pictures that's nominated is women talking. And who hasn't heard of women talking?
Okay, bad name. Okay, can we just say women talking? Bad name. Bad name for a movie because you have no idea what that could be about. And everyone's going to make fun of it, which is going to make people not want to see it. Not a good name.
I'm kind of hoping Jimmy Kimmel ducks the obvious jokes about it.
He won't. He's going to.
Ceremony, but he won't.
Too on the nose. Low-hanging fruit.
I just wonder if, people saw on their ballots, like, women talking and She Said, and they thought it was either the same movie or they're like, we can really only give one a chance because a woman talking and two women talking is basically, they're both about women, plural women talking, and they're both about sexual assault. I think that people are less likely to embrace this story that's kind of still going on than something that happened to women somewhere else. Apparently, Women Talking was based on a novel that's inspired by a real thing that happened to the women in a Mennonite colony in Bolivia. But, people don't think of it as being inspired by something real because it's not as much in the daily lives of people in our modern world. We're living in the modern Me Too, She Said world. But I don't know, there might be a too soon effect happening here. And also there's these other films that were about the abortion pipeline and about women who arranged for pregnant women to have abortions in the 70s. One of them is called Jane's and the other one is called Call Jane. And neither one of those was nominated.
I know those. I didn't even realize those came out.
Yeah. So Jody Berman-Kostanovich, when she was doing her recap, said she was surprised that those weren't nominated. But maybe this is all kind of like a sign that the Academy isn't ready to deal with the abortion issue, isn't ready to really reward too many stories of sexual assault. I don't know.
I will say She Said hit me in a way I was not expecting it to. I was watching the movie thinking it was going to be a movie about journalism. And then I think just watching it, it just made me reflect on my own experiences, just to the point where I was like, I literally had to excuse myself at the end of the movie because I was crying in the bathroom. Like, it was just one of those things where it was just like, it just happened. And like, we're still seeing the effects of it. And we're still seeing people come forward with stories, not even just related to Harvey Weinstein, but just trying to see the industry change. And I mean, it's heavy. It's an intense thing to think about. And all the movies this year, I mean, yes, Women Talking and She Said were movies that were shut out of the big contenders, but there were a lot of incredible women screenwriters and actors and characters this year. And I don't want to say like, yes, but I want to say like, yes, and Women King, The Woman King, that was a great movie. Viola Davis, that was a very interesting and awesome and thrilling movie to watch. And that really didn't get attention anywhere this year. But there were just so many amazing female characters and story arcs. And it wasn't just like a rom-com. And almost all of the female categories, like the actor and supporting and leading actors, they're all in comedies. Like, women are funny and they're being celebrated for it. Jamie Lee Curtis got an Oscar nomination for having funny hot dog fingers. Like,
oh God,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, usually women are told that they're not funny and they can't talk about their experiences and they can't do this and they can't do this and oh, they're whining and oh, they're too demanding. But this year we got to celebrate them being funny, them telling their truths. We had a queen protecting her land. We had parents who were dealing with finding themselves in parenting. We found musicians who have pushed themselves to the limit. Like, that's so cool. That's great. That should be celebrated too. We're getting dynamic female stories.
There was an animated movie that we've spoken about before on this podcast that Erin and I both loved called Turning Red. And it's a Pixar movie on Disney Plus. And it was Oscar nominated for Best Animated Film, which is awesome. It's about a Chinese girl who comes of age. And there's a lot to look and admire and be entertained by in that film. It's competing against Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which has won a bunch of awards.
Some over it. That should not be.
I think there were like 2 Pinocchio movies that came out this year. And how many do we need?
Yes.
Like, how many?
I think there needs to be like a best adapt, just like at the Tony Awards, there's best musical and best revival of a musical. I think we need to start including best revival of a movie because there are so many remakes and reboots and twin movies that they just need to be put in a category because Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio can probably be beautiful and thrilling, and it might really be fantastic step forwards for animation. However, it's been done before. So why is it taking away from movies like Turning Red and Jenny Slate's Marcel the Shell with Shoes on, Esther?
Yes, I know.
That movie was delightful.
I haven't seen it, actually, but it's on my list.
Esther,
I
stop
see
what
your
you're
note
doing.
in my document stop what I'm doing and go see it. But I assume you don't mean I should stop this podcast and go see it.
No, we'll finish the podcast and go watch it. Oh my God, it's so delightful. It's funny and silly. And I think it's based off of the shorts that she was already doing about this little shell. Like Marcel is just this real person who's a shell. And the way he or she, I'm not really sure, they look through life from this like funny little perspective, and a documentary guy is just a documentarian. That's the name. He's going through and just following them in this house that this Marcel lives in. Marcel lives in this giant house in Los Angeles, rent free, and just lives through life. And it's also one of the most thoughtful stories about family I've ever seen.
Wow. I mean, I guess I got to watch this.
But at the end of the movie, I'm looking at Adam and I'm like, this was a delight. I hope this gets recognition at the Oscars because it's so funny. Like, you think this movie's going to be stupid. And then at the end, you're like, I'm moved. Right. I'm moved by a shell with googly eyes.
Well, you have a good track record, Erin, because you also saw Turning Red before I did and highly recommended it. So I'm gonna definitely, it's on my list of movies to catch up on in the next month or so before the Oscars. Month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I also wanted to make note of the program director of the San Francisco-based Jewish Film Institute, which, we just had an ad for, Jay Rosenblatt. He earned his second nomination in a row for documentary short at the Oscars. So
wow.
You can tell that he really knows his stuff in terms of movies.
This guy knows what's up.
That's right. We'll put it in the show notes. There's an article that features Jay's nomination and has a trailer for his film, How Do You Measure a Year? Which, of course, evokes some Rent for those of us who are Broadway inclined.
I was like, is the movie about Rent?
It is not.
It is not.
But it chronicles his daughter's birthdays over the years. So it starts with her as a baby and she grows up. So
that's so cute.
And last year he was nominated for a short called When We Were Bullies, where he reckoned with his guilt over a boyhood bullying incident. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. And I think that regardless of, what happens now is the push and the campaigning really starts for these people who are nominated in all these categories. And they try to raise their visibility among, Academy voters, et cetera. And we all count down to the big show. One of the things that we learn from the nominations is it generates a list of things for us that people have found interesting this year. And it's a little bit of a time capsule of the year that was, and gives us a lot of opportunities to engage in viewing of entertainment that was found to be resonant for whatever reason. And we might not agree with everything, but, I'm really looking forward to catching up on some of these films, especially the ones I hadn't heard of or hadn't been inclined to try. And some people are saying you got to go see it. And so I'll go see it unless it's Avatar. But anyway, I think it's really having these nominations can be used as a resource guide, which I appreciate.
Yes. And now the moment you've all been waiting for, the Fabelmans analysis part 2, because we kind of talked about the Fabelmans already in previous episodes, but now the Oscars have come up. His movie about his family sort of got 8 nominations, which is a lot for him. But yes, the Fabelmans got 8 nominations, including Best Director and Best Picture and Best Actress. Michelle Williams, who played Leah Adler, but not really, whoever the character was in this movie. But let's be real. That's who she was playing. Before we go and recap the movie and all the announcements and reactions of people making it, I want to make an addendum, because last time I said that I didn't see the film when we talked about it last time. It was just kind of my observation of seeing it and the responses that everybody's had. And I wasn't sure how personal it was going to be. I thought he was really good at every single genre, but could he actually point the camera at the mirror and go, okay, this is my life. And I can now say that I think this is the most vulnerable movie he's ever made. And you can tell that there are other movies that he's made where he was trying to tell bits of this story in other ways. And he really wanted to tell his life, and he couldn't for a long time. And he figured out how to do it during the pandemic. And it's a really beautiful film. And then he ended up saying exactly my thoughts on what I thought he was doing, because when he won Best Director for her Golden Globes a couple weeks ago, he had this really awesome speech about it that I'm going to play right here.
I think everything I've done up to this point has made me ready to finally be honest about the fact that it's not easy to be a kid. The fact that everybody sees me as a success story, and everybody sees all of us the way they perceive us based on how they get the information. But nobody really knows who we are until we're courageous enough to tell everyone who we are. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out when I could tell that story.
But yeah, it was such a meaningful speech, and you can tell that he was really proud to tell this story, and it was pretty Jewish, and also an uncomfortable story, because I think his family is well known in the Jewish community. And so to kind of, in LA, so to kind of unveil some of the cobwebs and some of the not so perfect elements of his life, I think made him more human, and also showed that filmmaking was his escape. He literally saw everything through his camera lens. And I think that's really interesting.
It's been really instructive, I think, to watch him in these interviews. Like he's done a lot of them, obviously, about the film and what it does and doesn't represent, and, how he feels like his family, the support of his family was what helped him get through it. But he knew that this was a story he couldn't tell until his parents were no longer alive. But now that he's made it, he wishes his parents were alive. So it's like,
right.
There's a lot of stuff there. And I think for anybody who's wanted to tell a story about their family to somebody who's outside the family, but worried that that story would reflect poorly on a family member, and I think we probably, I venture to say that everybody's been there at some point or another, where you feel like you want to share a story, but you also feel like it's not fair because that person isn't there to talk about it. And,
right.
You're supposed to have respect for your family and your parents particularly. The question, I'm sure he asked himself the question of whether rehashing these stories was something that honored or that reflected poorly on his parents. And I'm sure that was part of his calculations when he was writing with Tony Kushner.
Yeah. And even in his Golden Globe speech, he's like, people look at me and they think I'm the success story. And you don't know your story. People don't know your story unless you tell it. And I think it's so interesting that he's saying that, because I think he's just trying to be real and honest and using this film to do that, because he's literally kickstarted careers of so many people in the industry. So many people at the Golden Globes were thanking him for being the person that believed in their script or putting him in a role. And then 30 years later, they're on the stage accepting a Golden Globe. And I think he carries that weight, and he just wants to be like, I'm just a guy who really loved filmmaking and wanted to make stories that I thought were interesting. And I thought it was so cool seeing how dorky he was. He portrayed himself like he was this dork who liked movies and, sometimes got the girl and said, he'd defeat the bully. And then maybe he'd say, well, I won't tell anyone, but maybe I'll put it in a movie one day. Like, it just feels like it's not his opus, but it feels like it's his aha movie. Like every story he's wanted to tell but couldn't tell it, he could just let it all out now.
Yeah. As we spoke about on an earlier episode, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lovely movie. It's beautifully shot. It's charming. There's parts of it that are really funny. There's parts of it that are really sad.
Yeah.
And complicated. I think that one of the things that stood out for me was what if I didn't know this was Steven Spielberg's story?
Yeah.
How would that change the way I felt about it? And it's impossible to know. It's just impossible because from the second they announced this, we knew it was Steven Spielberg's story. So there's no way to divorce it from, I guess, divorce being a theme in the film as well. The idea that, he has made many films in his career that have focused on divorced families or families where the parents are definitely not in agreement. And so that's something that he has been processing for a long time through his films.
Mm-hmm.
And even so when Gabriel LaBelle, who's playing the young Sammy, was interviewed by the LA Times, he said that he felt like a real kinship with Spielberg because he said that there were a lot of similarities. We're both Jewish. We're both kids of divorce. We both love films. And the perspective change of seeing your parents as people for the first time, that's something I was new to as well.
Yes. This is not just a coming of age story. This is the story of a kid who realizes his parents are human. And it's like, wow, that's so simple and also very interesting. Because I think everybody's been there. And it's so cool that he's like just been able to do so much in his career that now he gets to go, okay, let's just write this. That's just, I've done it all. I have to do this now.
Yeah. You wrote this in our show notes, but I'm just going to say it as if I came up with it, but it's like his memoir. And it really is. Like, so.
Me agreeing with you, but I wrote
it. Aaron. Good job, Aaron.
Also, quick segue. I think John Williams did the music to this movie as well. And he got a nod for the movie. And this isn't his last movie. I think he said his last movie is going to be the Indiana Jones movie. Yeah. But Steven Spielberg is going to be doing a documentary about John Williams and his life because John Williams has been the soundtrack to almost all of Steven Spielberg's movies. And they've done like 4 decades of work together. And I think that's also kind of special that like he's still going to John Williams going, I think you need to score my life now for this movie because you've also scored my professional life for so long. And I love that friendship that he's like also sentimental. He's been nominated like 300 times for awards in his entire life. And he's won like 200 of them at least. So it's a pretty good track record.
That's only 2/3. Did I do the math right?
So yes, we really enjoyed The Fabelmans. Does it deserve an Oscar? Yeah, that'd be really fun. I think his mom would be thrilled. Does it deserve Best Picture? No, I don't think so. I think Everything Everywhere All at Once deserves the Oscar this year because I think it literally checks off every single thing that would make a movie really good. Thus, why the title is called Everything Everywhere All at Once. So yes, no one asked me, but you know, if you're listening and maybe people who make the vote in the Academy, maybe the Academy's listening to us. So if the Academy's listening and you care about us and our opinion, I would be thrilled to see that movie win. And I know a lot of people would be too, because some of the other movies just weren't that good this year. I saw that movie in July and it's still the best movie of the year. So there.
What, Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah, that was my favorite movie this year.
Yeah. I mean, it does give you everything and everywhere all at once.
All at once.
So, like,
you walk into the theater
up to its promise.
And your head hurts because you're like, that movie was everything it was. Also, way to go A24 for just making some really creative movies this year and dominating at the Oscars.
Production house, yes?
Yes. So like when people think Disney or Netflix or Searchlight, they can also think A24, which is a production company.
Which also produced Marcel the Shell. Right.
Yes, it did. Another great movie. It's connected. Okay, so that was our Oscars spiel. Not to be confused with a Purim spiel. That comes in a couple months. So there's still time. But we are going to go through our speed round now because it's almost the end of our episode.
Yeah. I mean, if time has flown for you and you just want more of our voices, we are on the interwebs, so you can find more of our voices. But for those of you who are like, why don't they just give me a speed round and so I can get out of here? Here's your speed round. Okay. So as some of you may know, Holocaust Remembrance Day is this weekend. It is not Yom HaShoah, which is going to be in April. This is the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And if you have a Jewish newspaper near you, perhaps it's the J, perhaps it's something else, you can probably look in their pages, virtual or actual, and find various events and articles about Yom HaShoah, about Holocaust Remembrance Day, which I do have to admit that it was very confusing for me the first time I heard about this one in January. And I was like, why are there two? And it's a whole thing, and it has to do with the United Nations. And if you want to look it up, it's on Wikipedia. But anyway, the point is that in Los Angeles, there's this movie showing over the weekend that's kind of in the same thematic universe as Hunters. It's called Schachten, And it's an Austrian film in German with subtitles.
You're really selling it.
I know. Everybody's going to run out and go to the box office and go, do you have Schachten?
Wait, what's it about, though? What's it about, though?
Okay. Oh, you want to know everything. Okay, fine. It's set in the 1960s in Vienna, and it features a young Jewish businessman who witnesses the prosecution of a Nazi crime against his family that fails. And so he loses faith in the justice system and takes matters into his own hands.
Ooh.
It's another not evangelist. It's another vigilante who's trying to get Nazis. Anyway, so I think it definitely fits. And it was released in 2022. It stars Jeff Wilbush, who most people probably know from Unorthodox because he was the gun-toting Chassid who went to get back Shira Haas from Germany. But he also was in that show that I talked about on a previous episode called The Calling, that's on Peacock, where he plays like the Jewish detective. But it was released in 2022, and it's definitely part of this whole, kind of Hunter's multiverse where there's evolving Holocaust narratives about how people might have dealt with not feeling that they had gotten justice for their trauma. So I thought that was really interesting. Going over to more Israeli TV, it appears that Shtisel co-creator Yehonatan Endursky is working on a spinoff of Shtisel, which Aaron is super psyched for, has never seen a single episode.
For it. Yay, spinoff.
Right. But it follows the uncle in that program, Nachum, who is played by the great Sasson Gabay, who is a mainstay on the Israeli screen and was in both the film and the Broadway cast of the band's Visit.
Well, I love those things.
I know you do. I know. But he's really a terrific actor. He's in so many awesome things. But he was a terrible person in the show. But people loved him.
Oh.
So it was kind of like that guy you love to hate because he was always doing the wrong thing.
Well, I love that.
Yeah. But he's really a great actor.
Also, hey, Esther, do you remember Sundance, that festival that we were talking about that's in the cold place?
Yes, the cold place of Utah.
Okay, well, the Platt Pack is back and they won big at Sundance.
What does that mean, Aaron?
Well, it means that Searchlight Pictures, they bought Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman's movie called Theater Camp, which is a mockumentary comedy. They bought it for around $8 million. Woohoo, we love an indie. And it stars Ben Platt and Noah Galvin. They're two former Evan Hansons from the musical Dear Evan Hansen.
They're Evans Hansen.
I love that. And it's, I guess, based on an idea that Molly Gordon and Ben Platt pitched when they were kids. It debuted at the festival and it did really well. And now it has a home. So hopefully it'll get a release date. So we'll see it this year.
That's right. And it filmed on the former site of Kutz Camp in Warwick, New York. So
we love
pretty
that.
Jewy.
That's so fun. I love Jewish summer camp stories.
I don't know why they didn't film in LA, though. There's so many Jewish summer camps here.
Yeah, but I think
and that's where they went, right?
I think so. But I also think they split their time in New York and in LA now. So it's whatever. But you can also see Molly Gordon in You People, which is out now. It's the Jonah Hill, Kenya Barris, Eddie Murphy, Julia Louis-Dreyfus movie of Opposites Attract. We were extras in it. It's finally out on Netflix. Go see it or don't. We saw it in theaters. Yay, supporting local theaters. And we're definitely going to be talking about it more, but it's out, so go check it out. And extra credit, let us know if you can find Esther in the movie because you can see her. I am less visible, but that's okay. No small parts, just small Jews. It's fine.
Well, yes, I think that also once we have access to it on Netflix, there's going to be some hyper pausing to try to find Aaron in the crowd.
No, don't find me, but find Esther because you will find her.
No, I'm visible. I'm like,
I know. It's so exciting. But we're gonna talk about it another time. And last
soon.
but not least,
we should talk about it soon.
Okay, not yet, but soon.
Right.
Okay, not now.
Maybe next time.
Yes. What is it? When will that be now? Soon. And we
just now.
Yes. And we try not to be political here at the Bagel Report, but M&M's has forced us into talking about things. So here we are. M&M's has replaced, the candy has replaced its spokes candies with nice Jewish SNL performer Maya Rudolph, who also hasn't been on SNL for a minute, but she's still fantastic. And for everyone who hasn't heard about the Candytrocity, or is it Chocolatrocity or text? Yeah, it is. It's very text-emergency vibes. We need Rachel Bloom to get on this stat. Too long, don't read. M&M's decided to change up its talking candies, and they didn't think anyone would notice, and everyone noticed, and a lot of people got mad about it, and they said it was too woke, or it said it was like creating a polarizing world. I didn't know candies that can also come in peanut form can do that, but it did, and so they decided to roll back its efforts, and instead, it brought in the delightfully wonderful Rudolph, and now she's going to create Mas and Yas instead of M&M's. And I think she's
her
also...
name is Maya, so it's just a shtick from the commercial. Yeah.
Yes, but I think she's also going to play a role in the Super Bowl ad this year. So Mazel Tov, Maya, on the gig. We hope you get free candy for life.
You know, I just have one little coda, not the Academy Award winning movie, but one final thing I wanted to say about M&M is that I don't think we ever talked about this on the podcast, but when I was younger, there was like this big rumor going around that M&Ms were made with like beetles, crushed up beetles were giving it the red color. And that has largely been debunked. But it's just one of those things that I grew up with, like people saying that that M&Ms were technically kosher, but because of the red ones, they discontinued the red ones because the shell coating had been made from beetles, and the coloring was made from like dried, pulverized bodies of insects. So I don't know, but M&Ms, like that's something that was a yeshiva urban legend. So I believe now that they are hechshered, the red is back. I assure you it doesn't have beetles in it because, people would never stand for that these days.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid.
And that's it. That does it for us today.
Erin, it's always good to talk to you. And I'm looking forward to the next time, which is going to be very, very, very soon. And we'll talk about
you guys,
about our stardom in this film that's upcoming.
You guys, we have so much fun stuff for you. I can't wait for you to hear it all.
We're so excited. See you next time.
This has been The Bagel Report, a production of Jay, the Jewish News of Northern California, and a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network. Thank you to Lev Gringaz, our producer from Jew Folk Inc., David A.M. Walensky and Andrew Essenston, and Danny Lipsky for creating our logo. You can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. Connect with us on social, on Twitter, at Esther K, at Eben Moshe, and at The Bagel Report, on Instagram at Esther Kostanowitz, at Eben Moshe, and TBR the Pod, and by emailing us at thebagelreport@gmail.com. Now go and watch something interesting, and maybe we'll talk about it next time on The Bagel Report.